Hello fellow cyborgs! Today I come to you in my Mega Game Oramacon t-shirt, which refers to the guild, and I am going to be talking to you about my favorite board games. If you're not interested in hearing about my favorite board games, that's fine. I will see you tomorrow with a more bookish video, and if you are looking for board games that you have not heard of on Tabletop, which is a board game playing series, web series by Geek and Sundry, hosted by Will Wheaton, then also you're not going to find anything new on this video because I get most of my game recommendations from Tabletop. The good news to that though is that if you have not heard of any of these games and you're interested in learning more, I will link down below all of the Tabletop episodes where you can see a playthrough and see if this is the sort of game that would interest you. First off, I'm going to talk about Gloom, which I have this pack full of all the different expansions and additions, not all of them, but some of them, because I love it so much. Gloom is a storytelling card game where players are in charge of a family. They are hoping that their characters are going to be as miserable as possible before you eventually kill them off, because this game believes that if you are absolutely and horribly miserable in our lifetime, then in the afterlife you will reach eternal bliss. In this game, it's kind of like golf. You want to have more negative points, as many as you possibly can get. Negative points are what you're shooting for rather than positive points. You can play on your own cards or on teammates' cards, so this can really easily become a simple cooperative sort of game, a really nice and easy atmosphere to revenge card playing on your friends, so be careful. Relationships may be destroyed while playing Gloom. I should know, it has happened to me. Now, the cool thing about Gloom, and this is where it shines, is that with the different character cards and the different cards that explain what's happening, what bad thing has happened to your character, these prompt you to create stories about your characters, creating personas of the different characters, explaining their behavior, explaining how someone was poked by a porcupine, how someone got trapped on a train, how someone was killed by poison. The bad things and good things that happen in here are so kooky and whimsical. There's a story to tell with every card. You really don't need to look very far. I love this game because of the melancholy Edgar Allan Poe, Edward Gorey sort of feel to it, and how easy it is to make some really funny, melancholy, morbid stories out of the gameplay. Next up is a cooperative game called Forbidden Island, and this is for 2 to 4 players. So cooperative board games are where the players are working together to stop a disaster from happening or succeed in achieving a thing. Cooperative board games eliminate competition between the players, so if you have some people who tend toward unsportsmanlike sort of behavior while playing games, cooperative board games might be the way for you to go. I personally hate how competition can make me into a big bawling baby who thinks that everything is unfair, so cooperative board games are some of my favorites because then I just get to work together with my friends for the good of all. So with Forbidden Island, you and your game players are all explorers who've landed on this Forbidden Island. You're trying to find 4 pieces of treasure. Meanwhile, the island is slowly crumbling into the sea. You're having to work together to collect the pieces of treasure, make sure that you don't fall into the sea with the island and get out of there before you all drown. The board of this game is set up with interactive tiles that are beautifully illustrated. This gameplay is really fast and not too complicated. It's really, really easy to learn. It's really easy to play. It's a lot of fun. This is one of the cooperative board games that we whip out if we don't want to spend a good hour playing a game. This finishes up in maybe 30 minutes to 45 minutes, so it's a very short play, big cooperative board game. Roll For It is a dice rolling game, matching a dice rolling game, and it kind of reminds me of Yahtzee, except for it's less infuriating. With Roll For It, each player gets 6 die, all in different beautiful covers, and then out displayed in front of you are 3 cards, and the cards show different combinations of dice that you need to roll to fulfill that card's requirements and receive the points that it promises. The first person to collect 40 points is the winner, simple as that. There are cards from 2 2 to 15 points in value, I always go for the 15-point cards and spend the entire gameplay rolling to try to get 6 sixes, while everyone else slowly just accumulates 40 points in 2 and 5 increments. It's just apparently a part of my personality that I just have to go big or go home. Most of the time, I end up going home. This is a really fun game, really simple to learn. It's all pretty much about chance, so if you're not really big into strategy games, this is for you, except for there is a bit of strategy in that. Please just don't get stuck on the 15-point cards like I do. It never pans out, but I do it every single time. The cards are really well illustrated, but it's not too heavily themed. It's just a really cool dice rolling game that you can whip out in between longer games or just marathon over and over again. It's lots of fun, not too taxing on the brain, and really easy to learn. This is Elder Sign, which is a dice rolling cooperative game set in the Lovecraftian universe. This is one of the more complicated games that I have listed here. The setup is kind of a pain in the butt. There are a lot of little pieces and a lot of cards that you need to separate into different piles, but once you get that set up, this is an incredibly rewarding cooperative game with dice rolling as the main mechanics of gameplay. The dice rolling makes it so that it's not all you guys being dumb if you lose, it's just really the roll of the dice. It also makes it a really quick sort of gameplay. It's a really nice combination between something like Roll For It and something like Forbidden Island. The theming in here is also fantastic. You could spend hours just looking at the different cards and the different details. I got ahead of myself. So the story of this is that you and your friends are playing different personalities who have different sorts of abilities within the game, and you are investigating this museum for dark forces and having to walk through different rooms and completing different die rolling challenges to get the rewards or suffer the punishment. You are all fighting to keep one of the elder gods safely back behind the veil and out of our reality. You are aiming to collect elder signs which will combat this elder god while he is trying to doom you with some doom tokens, which is one of the many ways that you can die. I found that more often than not, though, that my friends and I are successful at least half of the time when playing this, so while it's a challenging cooperative board game, it's not like impossible to beat. I really love the dice rolling aspect. I also love the different character cards and their abilities. It's really neat, and it really makes you get into your character, remember what your assets are to the team, and be part of a team. The Lovecraftian themes just make it spooky and weird, and it's just really cool. An extra bonus is this can be played as a single player. I tend to be a hermit, so if board games allow me to play my favorite games by myself without having a huge party with my friends, that makes me extra excited, and so this is definitely one of the things that made me pick up Elder Sign, was that I could play it by myself if I chose to. So if you love Lovecraft or the idea of those themes, if you don't mind having to pay the price and setup to reap the rewards of a wonderful game, I highly recommend this. This is one of my new favorites, Sushi Go. It is a pick and pass card game. So the narrative of this is that you and your friends are in a sushi restaurant where the dishes are on a conveyor belt. You need to collect the dishes as they come in front of you, and the combination of dishes rack you up points. There are 3 rounds to the game, and the person with the most points at the end of the game is the winner. Illustration and card designs on these games are absolutely adorable. It's one of the reasons why this game is so much fun to play, because it is just so much fun to look at. Different cards have different values. Some of them score on their own, some only score in groups of 3, some score amazingly in groups of 5, and some, the dread pudding, only score at the end of the game. It's really a lot of fun. Most of the gameplay happens in your head, where you're trying to figure out what's the best strategy to go for this round, depending upon what cards you all are splitting between one another. You also have to keep an eye on what the person that you're passing the cards to is trying to do strategically, and maybe try to get them out of an extra dumpling that they could use to get super duper awesome points. You can play this game as aggressively and sabotagely as you want, or as individually and respectfully as you can be. It really just depends on the players in your group, and it really depends on the hand that you're dealt as well for each round in each game. This is really fast and fun, really enjoyable, and one of my new favorites. And finally, I want to talk to you about Pandemic. This is my favorite board game of all time. This is another cooperative board game, but the narrative of this is that there is a disease outbreak and you are part of the CDC team. You're out to try to prevent the spread of this disease and its other diseases as well. Try to prevent a pandemic and get out of this alive. There are so many ways to die in Pandemic, and there's only one way to win. win, which is to cure all of the 4 diseases that have infiltrated the world. Initially, the setup of this can be a bit confusing, but after a couple times of setting up, it's super streamlined and really easy to get set up, much quicker to set up than Elder Sign. Like in Elder Sign, you are assigned to different characters with different abilities that can be assets, or if you forget, hindrances to your team. In Pandemic, you have moving actions, so you move your peg around the map of the world, which is the board, or you're turning in cards or collecting cards. I just really love how much Pandemic gets you and your teammates talking, cooperatively trying to find a strategy, trying to look 2 moves ahead to see what your character can do, what the character 2 people away from you can do, and hopefully at the end you can cooperate and get some diseases fought. The first time that I played this with my friends, we played for 8 hours straight because we just couldn't find a way to win, but after those 8 hours, we eventually defeated the diseases and didn't die, and it was the most victorious I have felt in all of my life. Pandemic also has a couple expansions that are really awesome. The second expansion, called In the Lab, if I remember correctly, has a solitary player variant, but pretty much if you want to play Pandemic by yourself, just set up a 2-player game and switch between being the 2 players. In the second expansion, On the Brink, there's a bioterrorist variant where one of the players in your group is actively working against you, and you have to deal with them sabotaging you while you're trying to save the world and cure the diseases. That one's a bit difficult to figure out at the beginning, but once you figure out how to play it, it's a really fun variant, especially if you have a party pooper in your crew who's always being difficult and you give him something to do so he can do his own thing and be irritating, but be doing it for the sake of the game rather than just for the sake of being a poop head. But yeah, Pandemic is just like my favorite board game ever. It's because of the interactions that it provokes within the players, how communicative you have to be. There's a lot of strategy, but there's also luck. With playing it more and more, you get to understand what you need to be doing, and you waste less time chasing different things around the globe. It really is equal parts luck and strategy though, so if you're not a big strategist, then don't worry about it. It's not all your fault. And if you really love strategy, that'll get you to a certain point, but you know, poop happens. So these are some of my favorite board games that I love playing with my friends or by myself, depending upon if it allows the game itself. I hope you've enjoyed learning why these are my favorites, and if you have any other questions about gameplay or what the game looks like, I highly recommend you check out the episodes on Tabletop. Tabletop is one of my favorite web series ever. I just look forward to every single new episode. Every single time they come out with a new season, I constantly rewatch episodes of Tabletop as well. It's a 45-minute piece of your life well spent, more likely than not. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned a little bit about the board games I like to play, and perhaps learned about some board games you haven't heard of before, or a web series you haven't heard of before as well. Until next time, I hope you play some board games with some friends or family members, and continue to be lovely. You are a disease vector. Just a quick thank you to all of my patrons who are supporting my channel through Patreon. I am very, very grateful for your continued support and hope you are having a wonderful day.